9. Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Liftoff.
Liftoff. Liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
Roger, Tower.
Who Are You is a glimpse into life's journeys cut too short by Alzheimer's. I view this book from two perspectives. First, as someone who has lost loved ones to Alzheimer's disease myself, this book is a reminder of the journey that we all go through. Second, as an Alzheimer's disease researcher, this book is a reminder of the personal connection we mustn't forget. As a researcher, we collect data representing thousands of families and stories, just like those covered by Roy in this book. For anyone affected by Alzheimer's in some way, you will empathize deeply, and for those fortunate enough not to have been affected, you will undoubtedly sympathize with the personal story of the Alzheimer's journey. It's a lifelong love story of many happy years, but with an ending that none of us wish for. Roy writes, first connections, frequent travels, which sparked particular bright emotions for me as a fellow lover of travel, and the journey into cognitive impairment, then Alzheimer's disease that is familiar to all of us with loved ones that have or have had Alzheimer's or another dementia. The personal story and bright points of a marriage of more than 50 years are of course tempered with the heavy topic of the book. Roy provides reliable descriptions of scenarios and one can expect when facing this disease, and also offers good perspectives on approaches to different scenarios. If you are just beginning this journey, this book would be a good resource for some of the things to expect as a caregiver. The final points of the book follow Roy's recent advocacy for Alzheimer's research, through which I have met Roy. As a researcher, I want to provide some hope here. While Alzheimer's is a devastating diagnosis, there is much optimism in the field of Alzheimer's research and new therapeutic and risk mitigation strategies, some newly available and some in development, hold a lot of promise for slowing and perhaps one day even preventing Alzheimer's for a large proportion of the population. We're not there yet, but we're on the right track, and Roy's support of Alzheimer's research through the sales of this book will help get us there. And that's a foreword by Nicholas Cochran, faculty investigator, Hudson Alpha Institute for Biotechnology and other background. Roy, welcome. Thanks for joining the Alien Probe podcast here on Wednesday, December 3rd. By the time flies.
It does. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you, Doug. This is my second visit, thanks to Doug. And before we get started on this current Who Are You, I'd just like to thank Doug's followers that I was here before talking about this particular book, Crusaders Down Under, which we were just discussing before we went online, that with any luck, and perhaps a sequel to this, that it may turn into a mini-series. And the reason I bring that up is with the proceeds of this, just like this book and all my endeavors, my passion is to raise enough money so that we can jumpstart research. But I really appreciate your effort on this, and it will go to research for Alzheimer's. But
today we're talking about Who Are You? Roy wrote this book as well, and as I discussed in the foreword, we would like to discuss, this book and dementia and some of the things specifically that Roy has gone through with his wife, Wink. And I really would like to hear some, tell me about your journey with Wink. How did you guys get started?
It was, after 4 years in the Navy and high school and et cetera, I spent 2.5 years in college And I thought after 10 years of having my nose to the grindstone, so to speak, I needed a break. So I had been to Australia briefly in the military back in 1962 and for the Coral Sea celebration, and I loved the country, and I promised myself I'd go back. So in 1966, I took that year off, and I went down on the SS Oriana. It was a British cruise liner, and I didn't have any money in those days, and I got a berth right on the keel. You could look out and see the sea life swimming by you, so to speak.
Wow.
So I went down to Australia on that, and aboard ship there was a lot of Australians, and I'm kind of an outwardly going person, so I got to know a lot of Aussies, and I asked them specifically that I was going to spend a year down there, where should I look for a place to live? And majority of the people said Manly, and Manly is a beautiful little resort town on the north shore of Sydney Harbor. And they have a saying down there that Manly is 7 miles from Sydney and 1,000 miles from Cairns. And it turned out that way. So first thing I did when I got off the ship, I got a cab and I went into Manly, and I looked up a realtor, found one on the street corner in his office, and I told him what I was looking for, kind of, and he said, well, mate, he says, your lucky day, I have something that just turned up, and it was Kilburn Towers, which is, if you can Google it and find it, it's in Manly, New South Wales, Australia, Kilburn Towers, and it's 2 round cylinder buildings built in the 50s by the British, and it sits right on the harbor, overlooking Sydney Harbor. Absolutely stunning. I mean, for me, coming from Davis, flat lands with sugar beets and all that, it was, well, I had been in the Navy, but this is dramatic. So anyway, he showed me the place, and I fell in love with it. So we went back and signed the contract and all that. So I went back down to the place, Kilburn Towers, and I was coming in, and as I walked down, there was a young lady there in a bikini, and she was washing her Volkswagen. And so I went by, not being bashful, as I mentioned. I said, excuse me, but my realtor told me that my parking place was number 34. And she didn't look around, she didn't bat an eye, she didn't hesitate. And she said, it's right next to 33. And so I figured at that point, well, here's a challenge. Here's a challenge right there. So anyway, about a week or so later, I ran into her in the elevator, and she said, how's things going? And I said, well, to tell you the truth, I said, it's beautiful, but I'm a bit lonely, and I'm looking for a tour guide to kind of show me around Sydney. And she looked at me and she said, well, you know, I'm a high school teacher and I deal with children, but I'd be willing to show you around as your tour guide. So gave me one of those like looks, and that was it.
Wow.
So we started going out and going to dinner and so forth, and getting to know each other. And it was like kind of a liking a mystic took a hold of me. I said, this is it. So I was smitten, and fortunately for me, she kind of had the same feeling. So after 6 weeks, I found out that she had contracted to go be a school teacher in Penticton, Canada.
Oh.
And before we met, obviously. So she was committed to that. So we decided that we kind of wanted to spend the rest of our life together. So she went to Canada. Then I didn't have any more reason, really, to spend the whole year there. So I went back, got back into college. And then at the end of that school year, I had gone up to Canada and visited her. And then she came down the following April or May. And then because of circumstance with the immigration and so forth, we couldn't get married at that time because of paperwork. In retrospect, I would have done it anyway. And so anyway, we decided, got engaged. She went back to Sydney and taught school for a year, and I stayed here and worked and continued my classes. Then she came back on a cruise ship, and I met her, and we drove up to Canada and Vancouver, BC, and got married on July 3rd of 1968. And everything was beautiful from that point on. She ultimately, I got out of college, and ultimately I became a lobbyist for the pharmaceutical industry. And she landed after a couple of other jobs doing travel, because she had traveled the world really with her mother before then, and she spoke French and all that. So she got a job with United Airlines, a concierge.
Oh.
So we were lucky enough over the years to travel the world, and just it was amazing. I mean, it's like we were anointed, like some alien being had come down and took care of us, you know. And then in July of 2019, it's kind of called, I've read books entitled like A Turning Point in Your Life. Well, this was one. And we were sitting in our favorite restaurant in, we had a condo down in the peninsula near Monterey, and we were sitting at the restaurant for lunch, and she looked across the table at me in a confused sort of way, and she said, "Who are you?" Hence the book. So at that moment, I had enough knowledge about medicine. I just knew that life was going to be different. I was panicky. So we drove from Pacific Grove, our condo, back down to Sacramento. And on the way, I called my internist and made an appointment, and he met and gave her a memory test.
Did she know who you were after a few minutes, or it just it did act like that?
She said, "Who are you?" Now, obviously, in retrospect, I'm jumping ahead a bit, but I'll get into that. But we went back and met the internist, and he did a memory test, and she obviously couldn't remember those things, anything. So he referred her to a neurologist. So we made that appointment, and we were sitting in his office, and subsequent to that meeting with the neurologist, he sent us to get a brain scan, and that's how they diagnose it now. And he saw the beta amyloid plaque build up on the hippocampus, which is your organs in your frontal brow, to restore memory and so forth. And he walked into the room and never met him before, and he said, "Have you seen this?" I said, "No." So he showed us the brain scan. He says, "That's Alzheimer's." And I said, "Well, Doc, what's the prognosis?" And he says, "Well, 3 to 5. That's what he said, 3 to 5. So he left the room, and we didn't see him for another 4 years. We went to a nurse practitioner, and the truth is, the horrible truth is, there's no treatment. They have knowledge of it, but they haven't figured out what causes it. There's no effective treatments. So you're basically, when you leave that office, you know you're on your own. So I made some dramatic changes in our lifestyle. No booze, not that we ever drank that much, but no alcohol, good food, lots of exercise, social engagement, and just do everything you possibly can to make this thing, you could be with them longer. And after 4 years, the first year, 2 years, 2.5, it was relatively flatlined, and then all of a sudden it goes like this. And you don't have to be told when you need help, because of the stress, that I would just recommend to anybody listening that if you ever have to go through this, that you should learn to operate simple things like your house. Men call it simple, but because we never done it.
Right.
Can you work your washing machine? Can you go shopping? Can you prepare meals? Yeah. Can you do all the books? Can you do everything? So with all that in mind, I thought, well, listen, dummy, you're in it. You and your wife are in it. You're going to take care of her as long as you can, and it's just a mind changing. It's like you've been invaded, really. You know, it's like somebody came down. Here's the brick wall. What are you made of? How are you going to do this? So you better be prepared the best you can if it happens to you or your loved one. So given all that, 4 years, And then it got to the point where the memory was, she couldn't function properly. So I looked for a place, and by word of mouth and referral, I found a beautiful little Victorian home that had 12 availabilities for people in there. That was it. And the people I interviewed were terrific. I was looking for somebody that really had empathy for this and would take care of them. And I was lucky enough to find that. So after that, it was about 2.5 months, and because I'd had it home for four years, and the hospice people were terrific, and they said, you know, because of your efforts of doing everything you could, you extended this for about 1.5 years. So at that point, 2.5 months after she was put in the assisted place, she passed, and that was in April 20th of 2023. So that's about 2.5 years ago. So I decided at that time that I had to do something. And being a lobbyist, I had some contacts politically and this and that and the other, people I knew and so forth, and doctors and researchers and all that. So I had a little bit of background of how to maybe go about it. And I always kind of liked to write. So I wrote this book, and I'm writing a sequel to Crusaders Down Under, all of which will go to research and has been going to research. So I guess the bottom line is, and I want to make this very clear, that I don't care who you are. Sorry, I'm got a little phlegm here from this weather here. It's a little cold. Anyway, I don't care who you are on this planet. No one, unfortunately, is immune to this disease. No one. There is no prevention. If you get it, you get it. So therefore, if you look at historically, every time in this country that we've had a crisis with a chronic disease like cancer, AIDS, polio, all of those things, in every case, the public has been the one that rallied, poured money directly into research and jump-started that disease. Like St. Jude, for example, they've done a tremendous job. And it's because they went to TV early. So what I reckon, what my goal is to get enough interest in this and get a big enough microphone so that people will start putting money directly into research. And these researchers have told me that if they had the resources, they would definitely buy TV time, educate the public, because this is a scary disease. I've talked to so many people, and I think Doug has witnessed this, that some people, if they've been exposed to it, their loved one, they've lost them, or a good whatever, is they want to know, but they don't. It's a scary situation. But as Doug said in the introduction that Dr. Corcoran has put down there, he's a world-renowned researcher in Alzheimer's. In fact, this particular PhD, this doctor of research, his father died of Alzheimer's when his father was 67. So you talk about passion. It almost matches mine in finding causes and reasons and cures and prevention and all that. So I would encourage every one of us, the ones that don't have it, here's an opportunity in your life to do something about your own health, is invest in this with a good research foundation. You know, vet them out, find out if they are, the money's going directly to research, put some money into it, and the truth is, you will be doing something for yourself, because we're all self-serving, let's face it. So if you stay healthy and you are part of getting involved in that research, then if, thank God you don't ever get it, but if you do, you've done something to help yourself. And you have a chance to do that right now, because they reckon if they can get the resources the researchers, with 10 years or less, they can find out what we need to know about effective treatments and perhaps the cause of this. And I know it can be done. It's got to be done because it's a pandemic. You know that 10.8% of the people that get this diagnosed are over 65, and 33.3% are over 85. So now with our health and the things we're getting, if you eat right and do all the things, you're going to live. You're going to become a octogenarian and all that, like me. I'm 84. But I'm telling you that we have a golden opportunity if you're looking for a silver lining around all this, is to start personally talking to everybody and get involved and get the research going. And we've got to get on top of it because we have with the other diseases. There's no reason. Doug's got some beautiful dogs. And I'm going to use this analogy. If we can rally around sending $14 a month to save puppy dogs, which is a great thing to do, truly, then why in the hell can't we get together and fund causes and treatments for Alzheimer's?
Yeah,
So,
that was what you were saying earlier. TV time, would be one of the keys. That is there any research companies that you are aware of that are one better than the other? They're actually doing.
I'm not promoting all the research companies, but I would just recommend that there's ways to get the information and call them directly. You can Google the names of the ones who are really red hot in going after research in Alzheimer's and talk to them. Send them emails, get on the phone and talk to them and ask them what they're doing in regards to finding treatments and causes of Alzheimer's and vet them. And the one that I particularly have been working with is not only UC Davis here, and the lady that I work with, she's the senior fundraiser for Alzheimer's and such at UC Davis. So because I live here in this area, that's kind of the focal point there. But there is a place in Huntsville, Alabama called Hudson Alpha, and they're a private corporation, have been around for a long time, and they do a tremendous job in focusing. And that's the PhD, the doctor that wrote the foreword in Who Are You? So there are good institutions around that I would definitely look at. But, I'm speaking to everybody in the United States, hopefully, and you're going to find someplace, probably locally or whatever, that are really engaged in getting to the bottom of this. So that's what I would do. I would definitely get on top of it.
It's a scary disease.
Well,
I mean, my stepmother had it. I watched her degrade to the same thing, where I went and saw her and she didn't know who I was, and that's frightening.
I'm glad you brought that up, Doug, because after my episode in my wife said, "Who are you?" and then when the neurologist said, "Well, this is newly diagnosed," well, in their parlance, medically speaking, it was newly diagnosed to them. But I started thinking about this, and I know enough about medicine, being in the lobbying field in the health industry. I started retrospectively looking at the symptoms that my wife went through, and it was incredible. It went back at least 10 years previous to that point where we had the restaurant where she said, "Who are you?" And it was things like she wanted to give up driving. And granted, she learned to drive in Australia, and they drive on the wrong side of the road. But anyway, the logic she had, she said, "Well, Roy, when we go places, you always drive when we're together, and that's 99% of the time." She said, "Why don't we just, I don't think I want to drive anymore." And I sound very logical to me. So that was that. And then one time we went to do our will, and after the fact, I'm sure everybody here understands how wills work, and I was trying to explain to her because she said to me, she said, "Well, that means you're going to get all our money." And I said, "What?" And because before that, she was a lot smarter than me. Hell, she was brilliant. And I explained it to her, and how it really works that I thought that the lawyer explained to me. And she kept repeating it. Well, I don't understand. And that's the first time that anything came up subject-wise that she didn't understand. But I thought, well, maybe I took the blame. It's like I didn't know what the hell was going on. And then all these little episodes. And then I found out she did the books, and she stopped being able to longhand the amount of on the check, like $430.
Right.
And I saw a lot of them voided out. And I thought, well, maybe 30 years she's been doing it, maybe she's just tired.
Yeah.
So I made up excuses and this and that. And then a couple of times she fainted. One time at a restaurant, and one time we were just sitting around with friends, and she said, I'm going to faint. She fainted. Well, I found out that it was a seizure, and it's very common in Alzheimer's patients, but that was after the fact. So there's all these little things that happened along the way, and she was very athletic, and we used to walk and walk and walk. She could outwalk me, and we were on a vacation once to Aussie, and she stumbled and fell twice in one day, and I thought it was the cracks in the cement, or it was uneven.
Yeah.
So the long story is that I'd go to the doctor, particularly on the fainting episode, and the GP, general practitioner, they didn't identify Alzheimer's at all. They didn't make that connection. They said, well, pardon?
Excuse me real quick. How long before the Who Are You episode was the fainting and the falling?
Not long, not really. It had just been.
But you said for 10 years things have been happening.
Yeah.
Even if they would have even if you at the very first sign,
Yeah.
if you would have been able to acknowledge.
Exactly. But all these little telltale. I'm saying this because if you have to go through this, just watch these little changes in things. And I remember one time we were there, and I bought this little painting, and it was beautiful little oil of a little shot of Lavender Bay. It's a little village across from Sydney, and I liked it. And a local artist, a lady had painted it, and it's only about this big framed, and I really liked it. So I bought it, no big deal. So, and it was totally unlike her, totally. She's so, we were all, the mindset was the same between us, both conservative, money savers and all that. And we're walking back down to her sister's house, and I had this little painting, and she looked at me and she said, we're going to go broke. She said, and she was serious. She said, you just spent $125 for that little painting, and we don't have any money. Well, that was totally not true.
Right.
It just wasn't. And I was shocked. I thought, well, you do the books, and I didn't want to argue with her, but I knew something was haywire.
Yeah.
Little things like that, she just couldn't, you could tell that maybe the alien people were taking her brain. I don't know. It's just incredible. But getting back to the whole reason is that I got to get it out to the public so that all of us, people who don't get it or don't think they're going to get it, are not immune. I'm repeating myself a bit, but I can't emphasize enough that we have an opportunity now to really jumpstart this thing, to get it off the ground, to let researchers go 100% on this thing, because I hope none of you folks out there ever have to really experience it, but we have an opportunity to not have to if it does happen. You'll have a cure, treatments, etc. So.
Good. So even if they would have identified, even if you, for the first sign, you can't.
That's a great point. I know where you're going.
If they would have went and done the X-ray.
Well, if they had known, here's the sad truth today as we speak, but as the doctor in research says, that there is hope because of technology. Just in the last 2.5 years, they've come up with a lot of different kinds of things, the databases and all this, the research and this and that. They say about 40% is genetic, and they've identified 4 different genes that are tied to Alzheimer's, and about 60% is lifestyle and environment. So it's a complicated mess, but they're filtering it out. They're putting the puzzle together, and our job is to help them get more funds so that they can get more people and get this thing going.
Yeah, because even if they identified it at the first sign,
No,
they
what are you
can't-
going to do? And
Yeah, they
see,
can't do anything
no,
about it.
even if that doctor, when she fainted, we took her there. I took her there and explained. We were at lunch, and we were working on our condo down there, and hadn't had much breakfast and all that. And so he came. Well, she probably dehydrated or drank the wine at lunch too quick or something like that, and that was the reason why she had that faint. Well, that was not the case, obviously, but he didn't know that. But the point is that you made, Doug, which is a good point. Even if those had been identified early on, there's still no treatment.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah, it's a scary thing.
you know what's Cerealis and I'm trying to think, Cerealis mean?
No.
You're caught between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
That's exactly where you are when you're in this situation. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. There truly is. Yeah, I wouldn't be doing all this if I didn't think that there's a possibility of rallying the troops.
Awesome. We're doing great work. Hopefully this thing can take off.
Oh yeah.
I do kind of want to talk about, we did discuss the first book, but I want to kind of touch on the, because you're thinking about doing
A sequence.
a sequel.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about Crusaders Down Under, your other book, and that's what
Yeah.
we're going to show that.
Yeah.
And I urge everyone to pick that up because it also proceeds to be donated to
Sure.
the
You bet. That's
dementia
been
effort.
as I mentioned earlier on, we spoke about it before, but it's doing very well out there, and it was a fun thing to put together, and I can give all the credit to my wife. I don't know if I'm repeating myself, but in 2005, we were on a trip to Australia with her sister and brother-in-law, and we drove 6,000 miles through the outback, and I kept a daily journal, a micro daily journal. If anybody out there ever, they might be writers or whatever, I found that if you keep a journal, because you can't remember every detail of your trip, you just can't. But I did that, 6 weeks worth, and I came back home and I sat it down for a while, a year or two, and then one evening I picked it up and I started to read about, and I'd forgotten all those places we had gone. And my wife said, you know, you've always wanted to write. She said, why don't you build some stories around those places? So that's what jump-started my mind. So I started, on our long walks, I'd start putting together little scenarios of, you know, the protagonist and the hero and this and that, and all that. So I eventually, it took me about 2 years, and then I handed it over to my typist and got an editor, and that's the end result was Crusaders Down Under. And it's a different kind of book. I think Doug has a copy.
Yeah.
I think he's read some of it, and it's a different kind of. Each chapter is a series, kind of like Sherlock Holmes. You can read one chapter. It's just an episode they're in, and then stop, take a break, have lunch, have a martini, whatever you want to do, then go back. It'd be great on your flight down to Australia. It's 14 and a half hours, and you could almost finish this book on that 14 and a half hours, you know, and just have a little meal or a drink after each chapter. And by the time you finish with it, you'll be either asleep or laughing. You know.
I'll be asleep after 2 chapters if I have a
Hear
drink after each
But
chapter.
it's about a veterinary surgeon and his wife, and they have a place in Alice Springs, which is in the red center of Australia, dead center of Aussie, and they take care of all these exotic animals. Then on occasion, like a poacher or bad guys do something to the animal. So they coalesce together with their buddies and that animal, and they track down the bad guys, and they apply a little justice to them. So it just goes on and on and on and on. Different animals,
Awesome.
different situations, different places. But all the places in that book, when you get it, my wife and I visited. So it's all the iconic places in Australia, all the beautiful spots and the people, and the geography. So it's kind of a teaching book, a fun book, a mystery book. Yeah, it's got a few things in it that people like. So,
Yeah, we don't want to give up too much of the book, but I did want to make sure that we mention it.
well, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we'll make sure you pick it up. Again, Crusaders Down Under. And also, Who Are You? We can pick this Amazon
Amazon.
on both of them.
Yep.
Okay, well, Roy, I thank you. Appreciate you coming in and
pleasure.
doing the good work, and keep plugging away. We
Well,
definitely
It's teamwork.
need to support this, and
Doug,
get the word out.
It's teamwork. Yeah, we can do it.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for listening to the latest episode of the Alien Pro podcast. Roy Brewer, author, and thanks again for coming in.
My pleasure.
And let's get this thing rolling.
Let's do it.